Music's power and complexity need hardly be mentioned. Those who claim a steadfast musical knowledge do so at great risk, as careful ears notice the ever-expanding sonic horizon. In the face of such a towering mystery, it can help to understand the song of your own being. Dance is inseparable from music. Whether manifested in an elaborate routine or in a tapping foot, music inspires dance, whether physically or imaginatively. But someone must make that music, implying they intended or even designed that dance. Apparently, musicians do intend someone to dance to their music, though that dance might take various forms. How do musicians accomplish this? Through what process can a musician imply such movement of our bodies? That process is unsurprisingly rhythm, as exemplified by dedicated percussion instruments, whose defining characteristic is their transience, how quickly their sounds decay. For example, here we have two complex waveforms, graphs of volume across time, of two different instruments. Just by looking at them, do you know which of these is a drum?
If you guess this one, you're wrong.
It's this one. Again, transience, going from very loud to very soft, very quickly, is by definition what makes percussion instruments percussive. As essential as this transience is, it's only half of what constitutes rhythm. The other half? Repetition, repetition, repetition. A drum that beats only once can be considered transient, but it's hardly rhythmic. A transient sound repeated, on the other hand. It's in this repetition we realize the complete concept of rhythm. Now, why is rhythm so intuitively linked to our bodies? Fundamentally, it's because the essence of our bodies is also transience. Imagine your hand. You know where your hand ends and the air around it begins, at least practically. That is to say, in terms of matter and space, your body ends at some border, and across that border, you immediately encounter that which isn't your body. Your body is spatially transient. That's what makes it your body, and not something else. It has a defining border at which matter is not the air, your clothes, or another body. It's your body. Remember that transience is the essence of rhythm, but not rhythm per se until repeated into time. So what is the body's essential transience repeated into time? Let's use your hand again as an example. If you move your hand, you discover that the border which previously divided your hand from the air has now changed its position in space. But has it stopped being your hand? Of course not. This is the body's transience extended into time. It's been your body since you were born, it's your body now, and it will be your body until you die. Its transience, its border, will repeat through time, no matter how you move or where you go. You know, and will always know, the border between your body and the rest of the world. Yet your body does much more than just being your body. We naturally describe many bodily tasks as rhythmic. After all, pulse is itself a synonym for rhythm. The pace at which one walks is indistinguishable from a musical tempo. The method by which our children are given life is indeed a rhythmic endeavor. However, we hardly experience these as pervasively as we experience our body's persistence through time. And while rhythm may be the purest necessity of music, music is more than just rhythm, and your life is decidedly much more than just your body. When was the last time you had a song stuck in your head? Yesterday? You might even have one stuck in your head right now. If not, allow me. But when was the last time you had a movie stuck in your head? A poem? Less frequently, if ever, and certainly not in the same way a song gets stuck in your head. You might remember movies and poems, and perhaps that's what we mean by saying a song is stuck in your head. But the phrase getting stuck differentiates itself from the typical idea of memory. It implies that you can't help but to recall it, can't help but to sing it, either in your imagination or out loud. What is it that so aggressively, sometimes tortuously, demands you remember it? Most often it's the song's melody. The voice is the typical melodic delivery device. When used in concert with your teeth, tongue, and lips, your voice becomes speech. So you may also have a song's lyrics stuck in your head. But lyrics without melody are poetry, not a song. And again, we never say we have a poem stuck in our head. The most memorable aspect of a song is typically its melody itself. For instance, do you recognize this song? Well, probably not. A single pitch isn't much of a song. But how about this one? Or this one? Hopefully you recognize at least the first song, but there's a slight problem. These sounds aren't exactly those songs. They're those songs' melodies. These sequences, while perfectly recognizable as the specific songs they represent, lack significant sonic detail. In fact, these sine wave tones are the most sonically basic form of what differentiates melody from rhythm: pitch. To better understand pitch, we should understand our voices. Physically speaking, pitch happens as our vocal cords oscillate the air passing through our larynxes. Though sonically complex as the voice may be, we tend to limit our musical sense of the voice to the fundamental frequency at which our vocal cords happen to be oscillating. Our vocal cords can't oscillate at two perceptibly fundamental frequencies simultaneously, and so the voice is limited to making only one pitch at a time. A pitch, by definition, has only one fundamental frequency. So how does pitch become melody? The same way you make rhythm. In melody's case, all you need to do is repeat a pitch through time. Often though, melodies do more than this, instead playing several different pitches through time. Given that expanded parameter alone, we find that the possibilities for potential melodies quickly become infinite. In this way, melody is inextricably linked to a song's identity, setting it apart from infinite theoretical possibilities. This is apparent when attempting to identify an existing song. You'll realize that hearing a song's melody is far superior to hearing the song's rhythm. You may be able to recognize some songs by their rhythm, but what song is this? Is it Prelude in C major? Or is it Crazy Train? What about Favorite Things? We see that a melody encodes much more information than a rhythm alone. How? As it turns out, melodies are necessarily encoded with rhythms in order to exist in the first place. We can prove this by revisiting the single pitch. That's not technically a melody, it's a pitch. But give that same pitch a rhythm, and now you have a melody. Again, to have a melody, some form of rhythm is necessarily implied. So as we associated rhythm to our bodies, with what might we associate melody? We might instinctively say our voices, but we should clarify the profundity of the word voice. A more appropriate word might actually be identity, or spirit. As a melody identifies a song, we say a person's spirit, by definition, identifies that person. Remarkably, this spirit itself is best identified by way of the voice. Looking at someone's body may tell you much about who they are, but not nearly as much as hearing them talk, or more appropriately, hearing how they talk. The semantic information presented in speech is not nearly as meaningful as the melodic information that is presented. I love you has a much different meaning than I love you, or even I love you. Despite identical semantic content, the melodic differences between these iterations separate them drastically in meaning. Our wives were right. How you say something actually does matter more than what you say. The overarching melody of a conversation could be said to be its spirit, and the melodies of what you say should be called your spirit. As all-encompassing as the idea of spirit might seem, your life, your being, turns out to be even more complicated than just your individual spirit. Similarly, a particular melody, however representative of a song it may be, serves only as a symbol for that song's entirety. Thus may melody serve as a symbol of music generally, however incompletely. What would you say is the most important aspect of your life? Your family? Your friends? Your country? These three answers are so common as to be cliché. Why these answers? Is there some common theme between them? Yes, that theme is cohesion, or harmony. Intimate relationships, friendships, and societies are said to be harmonious if they are characteristically good-natured and enjoyable. These words, relationship, friendship, society, imply some form of cohesive structure, superordinate to any single person. Intuitively, it makes little sense to call any one person harmonious. For example, though you might think a friend's spirit to be innately beautiful, even melodic, a stranger wouldn't recognize them as anyone of significance, despite your deep connection to and reverence of that friend. There's nothing inherently harmonious about your friend individually. It's the relationship you share with that friend that we can call harmonious. The term harmony is used many ways. so some specification is warranted. Musical harmony, in its ultimate sense, is the cohesion of subordinate melodies. We may be tempted to consider intervals, or chords, harmony themselves, but I contend that consonance is a term better suited to describe them. To illustrate, let's say your first conversation with someone is remarkably engaging. Would you immediately consider that person a dear friend? Likely not, as one conversation is a severely limited representation of your relationship. We should call this conversation consonant rather than harmonious, in the same way you would likely consider this person an acquaintance rather than a friend. Several engaging conversations in a row with this acquaintance could eventually become a harmonious friendship, though this person could also turn out to be someone different from, or even antithetical to, who you thought they were. In that case, whatever consonance you experienced in your initial conversation was misrepresentative of who that person really is. This is why harmony is better understood through chord progressions rather than chords or intervals alone. Let's expand. Take a C major chord. It sounds quite pleasant, even on its own. This is analogous to the consonant conversation we mentioned earlier. Now, by playing another chord successively, we will create a chord progression, by definition. In keeping with our analogy, a pleasant conversation alone does not imply a deep friendship, nor does a pleasant chord alone imply a pleasant progression. If we played that same C major, but followed it up with two atrocities, we would appropriately run for the hills. That progression is clearly not our friend. But if we played something like this, then we might have found a buddy. Let's be optimistic and elaborate this friendship further. While that's perhaps not the most interesting of progressions, as some friendships might be somewhat boring, however amicable, we should acknowledge the principle that progression exemplifies. Namely, that progression is made up of three discernible subordinate melodies. The first melody goes like this. The second melody, like this. And the third, like this. With some focus, you can hear each of these separately when the whole progression is played. With each added melody, the resulting progression is more ornate and elaborate than any of its constituent melodies, and we've increased the amount of musical information substantially. Armed with that new information, we realize that a chord progression can be used to definitively identify a song, as opposed to the essential identification we accomplished with the song's melody. Take this melody. Is that heart and soul? Seems like it, but by changing the chords beneath the same melody, we change the nature of the song completely. Spooky. While that melody seems to work over both of these chord progressions, the first progression distinctly identifies itself with the song Heart and Soul, while the second progression does not. Analogously, you can only essentially identify your life through your own spirit. You cannot definitively identify it that way. You must ultimately define your life contextually in your relations to others, family, friends, and society. If this contextual definition is actually necessary for every individual, the implications are fathomless. Even if we deeply understand that we all depend on one another to comprehend our individual spirits, our individual beings, we might only glimpse the sum total of all spirits, of all beings, ebbing and flowing in harmony, each having melody and rhythm, all presumably destined for some final state of eternal equilibrium, some inevitable definition. That Song of Songs, God.